former Reichsmarshal, Hitler's designated successor and the former head of Germany's Air Force, had killed himself by swallowing cyanide, cheating justice and outfoxing Andrus, who had vowed that his prison would be suicide-free. The commotion that followed Goering's death had woken the other prisoners. At 12:45 a.m. they were told to dress and were given their last meal: sausage, potato salad, cold cuts, black bread, and tea. Most didn't touch the food. Keitel had made his bed and asked for a brush and duster to clean his cell. Like Andrus's, Keitel's life had been ruled by army regulations. Since his capture by the Allies 18 months earlier, he had played the part of a disciplined soldier. His bearing was erect, his silver hair and mustache always perfectly trimmed. A year earlier, when Keitel arrived at the Nuremberg prison, Andrus had torn the shoulder boards from the general's uniform. He told Keitel he was no longer a soldier. He was now a war criminal. Nevertheless, each day in court Keitel had proudly worn the plain tunic, blooming breeches, and black boots of a Wehrmacht officer. Keitel's defense attorney had played on the notion of following orders. He had only been doing a job he'd trained for his entire life. Keitel's commanding officer was the Führer, and questioning orders was never even a consideration. The tribunal had seen it differently. Superior orders, even to a soldier, cannot be considered in mitigation where crimes so shocking and extensive have been committed, the justices had said about Keitel's defense. They found him guilty on all 4 counts of the Nuremberg indictment. When the justices told Keitel he'd been sentenced to death, the general nodded curtly and left the courtroom. Now Keitel was hearing his sentence for the second and final time. "Defendant Wilhelm Keitel," Andrus announced, "on the counts of the indictment on which you have been convicted, the tribunal has sentenced you to death by hanging." Once Andrus had moved to the next prisoner and Keitel had returned into his cell, a stocky man with glasses, receding gray hair, and a doughy face followed the field marshal to his cot. Chaplain Henry Gerecke, a captain in the U.S. Army, was carrying a Bible. He asked Keitel if he'd like to pray. Gerecke, rhymes with Cherokee, had also been rattled by Goering's suicide. An ocean away, Gerecke's St. Louis Cardinals had been battling the Boston Red Sox in the World Series. The prison's other chaplain, Father Sixtus O'Connor, was rooting for the Sox. Though from upstate New York and really a Dodgers fan, he'd chosen Boston in a bet with Gerecke. They had been in the guards' booth on the prison floor awaiting a telephone call when Goering bit down on the cyanide. With the Palace of Justice locked down for the executions, the only way the chaplains and guards had of receiving updates after each half-inning was through phone calls from an American officer outside the prison walls. Just after a call came in that Boston's Dom DiMaggio had doubled in the top of the 8th, driving in 2 runs to tie St. Louis, Goering's guard began yelling that something was wrong. Gerecke was the first to get to the Reichsmarshal as he died. 2 hours later, Gerecke was with Keitel. They sank to their knees in Keitel's cell, and Gerecke began to pray in German. Andrus's words must have triggered in Keitel the realization that his life was over, because his soldierly demeanor was suddenly shattered. His voice faltered, his prayer trailed off. He began to weep, then sobbed uncontrollably, his body jerking as he gasped for air. Gerecke raised his hand above Keitel's head and gave the general a final benediction. Most likely it was Martin Luther's favorite from the Book of Numbers. "The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine on you and be gracious to you. The Lord lift up his countenance on you and give you peace." Then the chaplain was called to the next cell, and he rose to his feet. A little more than 3 years earlier, on June 3, 1943, Henry Gerecke was late for dinner. He burst through the front door and bounded up the wide wooden steps, 2 and 3 at a time, leading to the 3-bedroom apartment at 3204 Halliday Avenue in South St. Louis that he shared with his wife, 3 sons, and sister-in-law. Gerecke's wife, Alma, was the only one home. Her younger sister, Ginny, was out.